Hello, what is up guys? It is Keegan here, and today I am bringing you week number 7 of the NCP. Today we're playing against Grandmaster D.Rey and his LA something. I honestly do not remember what the team name is, but we're doing a little bit of a showdown team preview this week, and we're going to do the same for next week. We might actually not do a team preview next week. We'll get to that when the time comes. But it has been a pretty stressful week for me all around. The next 3 games that you'll have seen, week 6, 7, and 8, I played within the course of 6 days. And it's been kind of, a lot that's been going on recently. For those who, don't follow any of the Magic stuff I do, the face-to-face event in Halifax, one of the, initial stops on the Pro Tour qualification is coming up the day after this goes up. So I'll be playing in that event. And that's been kind of my main focus the last 3 or so weeks, is preparing for that, getting back into the swing of things with Magic, and really putting my mental focus there. And that just so happened that coincided with the end of the season for NCP. Now, that doesn't mean the season's over. We're 4-2 currently, and 1 win will guarantee us playoffs, though we're likely in it already. But this right here could be a big game in confirming that, because coming into this game, D.Rey is 2-4. And if he goes to 3-4 and we go to 4-3, he is, an additional threat to push us out of that top playoff spot. So this is an important week to win, and this is the game out of the 6 that I really prioritized winning. This is the one that I knew I had to win, because if I won this game, obviously there's no risk at all of missing playoffs. But if I lose this game, this is the game that puts the highest risk at me missing the playoffs. So this is the most important game. I put the most thought into this build. I mean, the build isn't great to begin with, but it is what it is. So let's get into the team here. I'm going to open up D.Rey's team as well, just so we have that up, and that'll be, hopefully on screen. If I don't forget to do it, to put it up, my apologies. So let's get into the team. So we start with the Diancie here. Now, Diancie is, really primarily here to deal with a few things. It can help, it's there to pressure, Hydreigon, and in the sense not that it punishes, Hydreigon, Life Orb Hydreigon, obviously that Flash Cannon kills this, but it forces Hydreigon to not be choice specs, which is, really, really important in this matchup. Preventing my opponent from being able to just drop a Draco every time, Specs Hydreigon comes in is really, really crucial against my team. If you look at my walls, Slowbro, Tornty, Corviknight, Hippowdon, not really a team that's, super well equipped to switch in on, dropping Dracos every turn. So this Pokemon's existence on the team prevents that from being an active threat in the builder, as well as throughout the middle of the game. Now it does some other really cool things. It comes in on Slowking Galar, which is important. It comes in on stuff like Talonflame, that's the big one, and then it can kind of pivot around Gigalith as required. The moveset is pretty basic. Earth Power is a really good move to pressure any of the common switch-ins, so stuff like Excadrill can't take advantage of Diamond Storm attacks, and then obviously Stealth Rock is just really important in the grand scheme of things in Pokemon. So we're back to bringing Slowbro. It's been a while since our hero Slowbro has joined the fight. Now Slowbro is really good here, as it's another way to answer Talonflame, another way to answer the Excadrill. You can answer the Mancho as well. Rocky Helmet, is going to be putting a lot of damage on the opposing team that way. Future Sight is another move that's really key in this matchup. So the reason why I like the Future Sight here is a lot of these Pokemon, I do need to put some chip on, very specific spots, to enable, some certain 2-hit KO. So like something like Slowking Galar, I can deal a lot of damage against that with the Cinderace, for example, or the Dracozolt. But if well-timed Future Sight, make sure that stuff like Regenerator is not really that much of a threat. It also puts damage on Decidueye and prevents Mienshao, especially, from coming in advantageous situations. Kind of keeps that out of the, the cycle for a few turns. Obviously, it's free Hydreigon to come in, but we can definitely play around that with our Tornty and pressure it out in those specific situations. Tornty, we're going Assault Vest this week, so this is my Tornty, or my Hydreigon answer. Assault Vest 252, 84 special attack, and 172 speed. Knockoff obviously is just a great move in general on this thing. And then the Dark Pulse, the reason we have Dark Pulse here instead of the Hurricane is it just does a little bit more damage to Slowking Galar. I feel like that's not true. It probably is not true, actually. But it's stuff, it's like, yeah, I don't know, maybe that was a mistake to put Dark Pulse on looking back. Oh well, it's a move that can hit. That's the primary focus, is that this move can actually hit the Pokemon every once in a while. I've been missing a lot of the Hurricanes recently, but this Pokemon, I mean, its main focus is just to deal with Hydreigon and then knock off and U-turn on everything else. We're running Cinderace Dracozolt this week without a Sand Setter. My opponent does have Sand on their team with Gigalith Excadrill, and I'd like to be able to, if I sit my... I'm pretty sure they're bringing their Sand, because they assume that this is going to be, a dual Sand week. And it allows me to, free up an entire slot on my team and take advantage of my opponent's Sand. Likely run Smooth Rock Gigalith. That's usually the set that most people run. And then that's just great for me. I get to take advantage of that all game long, while freeing out up another slot for, Diancie, which is, as my rocker, which, has some other applications as well in this matchup. The set, it's Air Balloon. So the reason it's Air Balloon in specifically is if there's situations where, it's Substitute and Air Balloon are kind of interchangeable. They don't really mix well together. I probably should have ran a different move, but they both kind of accomplish the same goal, and that I want to prevent Excadrill from checking my Dracozolt at most points throughout the game. So whether this comes in for free on something, sets up a substitute, then kills the Pokemon, or whether, this comes in raw against Excadrill when the Sand is up, no Excadrill set can then beat this Pokemon 1v1. So that's kind of the thinking behind this, is, to win the Sand War that way. There are plenty of other ways to win the Sand War still, but that's going to be the primary one. Pretty standard set here from Cinderace. High Jump Kick is to pressure the Gigalith. While we do want the Gigalith around for Sand, going to be really important to get that whittled down into the late game. And Court Change, obviously, the way to remove hazards from my side of the field. Unfortunately, when I set up my own Stealth Rocks, this won't work very well in the long game, but, you do need some sort of hazard removal, and I think I've been really lazy with bringing hazard removal this season, and I think it's cost me in potentially too many situations. Kartana, Choice Scarf Kartana, I mean, there's nothing really to say about this, honestly. there just really isn't. I brought this every week. It does the job every week. There's just not really much to say about Scarf Kartana. So that's the team builder. It's not really as in-depth a one as I would like, and next week's won't be as well. But, come playoffs, we're going to get really, really deep into these teams, and you'll really bring some good stuff. So, stay tuned for that. But let's get right into the battle. Alright, it is battle time. D.Rey has brought Hydreigon, Talonflame, Gigalith, Primarina, Decidueye, and Excadrill. So as expected, the Sand Setter was brought from D.Rey. It was a little bit of an interesting thought in my head. I'm like, does he set his Sand Setter? Does he expect me to sit mine? Then we're kind of in a goofy spot. But then we end up in a position where I think my Pokemon is advantaged anyway. That's the cool thing about this Dracozolt set, is that it's advantage whether D.Rey brings this Sand Setter or not. I decide to lead with the Torn here first, and there's no other reason besides it's just a default really good lead against basically every team in every matchup in every situation. There's really not a situation where it's a bad lead at all. Especially here, what leads off well against it? Gigalith, sure, but you get to U-turn off of it. You can go right into the Slowbro, set up a future sight, teleport away, see what, his default answer is to my Slowbro, and then move on from there. As you guys can probably tell, this is a post commentary today. I'm going to be post-commenting the last two battles of the season, and then we'll be back going to live commentary for the rest of the season. The only reason we're doing this is, as I said, it's been a little hectic, and I'd say I want to put, more of my mental into the game itself, not have to focus on commentary, just focus on the battle. Let's get the win and get out of there, and we can focus on commentating in the playoffs once I've got a little bit more mental headspace back, from being done testing for a big Magic event. So the lead matchup is predicted. I could have Focus Blasted here, but I think that's just too risky with Hydreigon in the back. We have no idea what type of Hydreigon set it is, so there's really no way that you're going to ever see me risk this on turn one. Obviously, we're going to get Self-Rocked on here. That's just going to happen. But really, what are we gaining from Focus Blasting here? And then we still U-turn. It takes a lot of damage, I guess, but it's still, we lose our Sand Setter basically in this matchup too. So that's, another thing to consider there. Our opponent has set up the Stealth Rocks here, though, with the Gigalith as predicted, and now the Slowbro comes in. As the Slowbro is basically the default answer to a lot of Pokemon on D.Rey's team. But, Gigalith is going to be the main one in this matchup based on what he brought. Now, I'm pretty sure, I just like to teleport here. I could have Scalded to put some pressure that way on his team, but I just want to get some free advantage, see what his initial switch into this is. I expect it to be Decidueye, but let's be, entirely sure. And if we Scald into Decidueye and don't get a burn, what type of position are we looking at after that? We don't really have great switch-ins to this. Realistically, our best bet is just to pressure it out with something like the Cinderace, which ends up coming in here to this Decidueye. So, Decidueye obviously can't really stay in here. We could bait it. We could just, click Pyro Ball and put damage throughout the rest of the team. Thankfully, Sandus does a really good job of baiting a lot of the items on opponents' teams. One of the things to always look out for in this generation specifically is the fact that, boots and leftovers are two common items, and you can usually tell which one is which based on the sandstorm damage in the early game. This is, a candidate for heavy-duty boots for sure. But we see here the leftovers. Now, Talonflame is going to come in. There's not really much I can do about that. Coming in, I can U-turn obviously, but I have really good just hard switch-ins to this thing. So a Core Change here is just an effective use of a turn. Put Stealth Rocks up on my opponent's side of the field with the Cinderace. That's just a really, really good exchange of turns there. And now we get to basically bait out and see what type of Talonflame this is. It's not really going to want to come in on Slowbro too many times or attack in front of Slowbro too many times throughout the rest of this battle, and it's obviously going to be heavy duty boots, but we do have opportunities to knock it off at some point throughout the game. Kartana, this is probably a really good switch into Kartana, likely something he wants to try to do. It could switch into Talonflame. I could have Talonflame inverse resist at some point. The opportunities to knock this off will become apparent at some point throughout the rest of this game. Now, he does like to just U-turn here. I mean, that's pretty basic and pretty fair. There's not really much else he could accomplish. He could taunt, I guess, but my Slowbro is not really at a health where I would need to do something that would require a taunt. And then in comes the Hydreigon. And right here, this is kind of the spot that I was really worried about in prep, is that, Draco, is a really tough move for me to switch in on a Pokemon that has Flash Cannon. It reveals leftovers here, which is really, really weird. I was expecting some sort of Life Orb set. Choice Specs maybe not, but Life Orb I think would have been really, really good against my team. And now I'm just kind of concerned. I'm like, okay, well, what's going on here? I guess this is defensive. I can easily come into Tornti and just deal with anything this thing has to offer. Not really concerned at all. And he clicks Dragon Dance. So that's a really interesting, set here. To take advantage of my team. I'm not sure entirely what this takes advantage of specifically. That Life Orb special wouldn't just, do more of. But, it does potentially take advantage of stuff like Dracozolt, prevent it from, coming in and sweeping it later. But now I just get to fire up a free Focus Blast here, and you'll see quickly that this potentially starts to go wrong very quickly. As, I take my time to think about this. I could just U-turn off of this, deal a lot of damage, and go into something like Diancie. The thing is with Diancie, though, is I have to scout for the Iron Tail here. I have to know if it's Iron Tail, or I have to know if it's Earthquake. And that'll basically determine how I, take advantage of it. As I alluded to, the Focus Blastomus here is rather annoying, as that puts me in the situation where I now have to make that determination, and I have to play around it in this way. So this is kind of where the moment of truth is to come here. Now, does this Pokemon completely ruin my life? Now, it's an interesting choice. I could choose to sack off the Tornadus here and elect to, not have the Pokemon for the rest of the game, bring in the Sand Rushing Dracozolt and deal with it that way. The problem is, I think I still get outsped, unfortunately, in that spot. And I really do not want to lose this Tornti early. While it was designed primarily to handle this Pokemon specifically, it's really hard to not take advantage of... It's hard to not have that Pokemon in the back pocket still, considering how useful it is with Regenerator. Especially, if I do get out of this scenario, I still have a good chance of winning the game. Now, he goes for the Crunch here. Kind of expected that to come out here, and I know I'm very, very defensive in this situation. And now this is where I have to make the scout for the Iron Tail here. Basically, I'm like, if he's got Iron Tail, he's got it. It is what it is. I got to tough it out. and figure out another way to beat this Pokemon, but I can just go hard here right into the... I think I elect to go into the Slowbro here. I could have gone into the Torn, but given the HP calculation on the Diancie right now, or not the Diancie, on the Torn T, didn't really want to, risk that more than I had to. I'd definitely take that, and we see that this Pokemon has Earthquake, so Earthquake is really good for us. The fact that they, the fact that he doesn't have Iron Tail means that now Diancie can come in and just answer this Pokemon Moonblast, and then the situation is solved here. The question here now at this point is, how do we get back into Diancie? Do I just go hard in here, predicting a crunch, or does he predict me to go back into the Diancie? And maybe that the way I've played this, I don't think he has seen that I'm ranking on, but actually he has off Talonflame, so there might be some merit into electing to go for the Earthquake here on his part, and this is why, I'm taking my time here. This is a really, kind of big turning point in the game here. If I get this turn wrong, then, we might just lose the game straight up. So, few options I like to have. I can go to Torn T, obviously, be immune to that Earthquake, but then I have to sack that off, basically. And then bring in Diancie, and then he can just switch out, and then this problem, exists at a later point in time. Now, I think what happens is I like to just go straight into Diancie. I expect that in the end, he'll probably just attack what is in front of him. He's kind of done that consistently to start, and I left that right till the end. This is the longest amount of time I took for any of my moves. And, as I say, one thing I've always been consistent in what I've said about, kind of this timer and Wi-Fi being a little restrictive. As he goes for the crunch, it works out in the end, and we can live any Earthquake hit at +1, so we are in the driver's seat now in this position. I've always said, use all the resources you have available to you in every given spot. Timer is one of those resources. You don't get an award for finishing the game with 5 minutes left on the timer. You have all 10 minutes there, make sure to use it all, or use as much as you need, especially in tight situations like this where the DMs come onto this one turn. Look at this, 17 health right here, razor thin margins here to, get out of this position. And now one of the biggest threats to my team has been eliminated. So that's kind of one of my main lessons that I'm taking away from this is, I've tried to be as thorough as I possibly can be, given, the timer circumstances. I try to be as thorough of a player as possible, sometimes to my detriment, but certainly here I think this was worth taking a lot of the time over to decide how to approach that sequence. Now in it comes the Excadrill. Now this is kind of the main threat to, the other main threat to my team is that this Pokemon does a lot of damage, and it's one of the reasons that Slowbro, can kind of be, I'm not going to say over-relied on, but, in a sense over-relied on in this scenario, and that it has a lot of Pokemon it has to check. Now it does a good job of doing that with the Regenerator, but over time, sometimes you just take too many 40-45% after a while. Right here, I go for the Earth Power, and the reason I go for Earth Power here is if he elects the Swords Dance, and considering the health my Slowbro is at taking that hit, I could be in a really tough spot, and I don't really need this Diancie for anything. It traded for the Hydreigon, which is more than could have been asked for. We got Stealth Rocks up with the Court Change. I can just Earth Power to protect against that Swords Dance from being a problem. As you can see there, the Earth Power connects, and now that Pokemon is basically, free to be revenge killed by basically any Pokemon on my team. Kartana could revenge kill what stays like a knockoff. Torn T can now revenge it. Well, it could anyway, but you get the point here. Any damage is good damage in the long run, as he's just going to elect to Earthquake here now, take out the Diancie, and now it's, a +2 Excadrill, but I basically have my pick of the lot of what Pokemon I can elect to check this thing back with. Interesting choice, I could just go in Dracozolt, but I don't want to reveal that my Dracozolt is specifically designed to win these 1v1 scenarios. I don't really want to risk an Iron Head flinch. There's just no reason to put myself in that position. So Cinderace is the pretty obvious answer to this thing at this point in time. No Sand Up, might as well get as much value out of the Cinderace as we can in the early turns. Make sure, that's one kind of other thing I've learned with this, style of team. Very aggressive momentum-based team is, take advantage of the Pokemon you have while you still have the opportunities to. It's one thing I've noticed is that, Sometimes, these attackers, will take hits and get whittled down eventually. So take advantage of them while you have them and use them in the situations they're optimal for. Sure, I could have brought Kartana in, threatened out, and got a knockoff, but this is the situation that Cinderace can thrive in. And if it's the last Pokemon left and a situation arises where I have to take damage, I'd rather it be this Pokemon than say the Torn or the Kartana, which are going to be more useful in the late game against something like Talonflame, as I can knock off the Talonflame, potentially go into Slowbro later, force it out. So that's kind of the mindset around that I have around this, and kind of why you see me always default to Cinderace most of the time. There's a lot of teams in the late game you'll end up naturally just being resilient to Cinderace. They'll be able they'll be prepared for Pyro Balls, and it's really a Pokemon that has a one-dimensional move pool, and that really Pyro Ball is the only really powerful move that it can use besides High Jump Kick. It does have some other coverage moves, but it's one of those Pokemon that can is at risk of being walled very, very easily, especially with its low bulk. Now the Stealth Rocks come back up. That was always going to happen. Nothing we could do about that. And now we both have Stealth Rocks on either side of the field. I'm just going to like to teleport here. As he sets up in my face, which is, I wouldn't say interesting, but potentially noteworthy. And I consider bringing in Kartana here, and I think I do end up going into Kartana. I want to pressure this thing out. I think I want to try to get that knockoff on to the Talonflame. The big risk with this though here is if I get burned, that puts me in a little bit of a dicey situation here. If I get burned on the Kartana, so that potentially ruins another threat that I have access to. If this gets burned, you've seen it all season and how effective it has been of just clearing teams. This is one of the teams that it actually has a tougher matchup against. Talonflame is a really tough Pokemon to switch into, etc. I just elect to make the double out here, not to risk that, and to continue to bait the Talonflame, but not risk getting burned, because I assume it's not going to be Gale Winds. It would make no sense for Gale Winds Talonflame to come out against a Sand team like this. So as expected, Talonflame comes in here to this spot, and now kind of have a few options here. With the Hydreigon gone, Future Sight becomes a really, really appetizing option here to start clicking and putting some pressure on the rest of the team. I could teleport out, but I'm not really concerned at this point of what Decidueye can do to my team. As I said, I don't really need something like Tornadus anymore. And even if it comes in and I lose a Pokemon, then something's going to get hit by a Future Sight. The wheels start turning from there, and I can find my way around that Pokemon. My opponent, instead of going to Decidueye, decides to bring in the Primarina. I figured Decidueye would have been a really good bring in this spot, or a really good switch in this spot, but I mean, this Pokemon still has the opportunity to do a lot of damage. Now, this Future Sight set up for a few turns from now will either hopefully put some damage on this, which would be nice, though I don't think it's going to be really relevant for most of the game. This thing will just straight up die to Kartana or Dracozolt, which are kind of the main answers to it. So I've got a few options here. I could just slack off just to see what this Pokemon wants to do. If it's Moonblast, I likely can take most Moonblasts and most hits anyway. And just kind of sit on this thing for a little bit and see what my opponent likes to go for. He likes to go for the Moonblast. You can see here we start at 121, and that's going to do about 117. So it's going to do over half. So we're not going to be able to stay in and take that second one. But we've gotten to predict the first move my opponent has elected to go for. And now from here, it's Scald free potentially. Scald was free the last time that this elect to click a move. So we're going to expect the Moonblast to come out here. Does that mean we go into something like Cinderace? No, that's not something that we are willing to risk at this point in time. Certainly not. And I think at this point we're going to have to start sacking off our Tornadus here. We're at the point now we really don't have a lot of switch-ins to kind of some of these secondary threats on D.Rey's team. Primarina and Decidueye, we do have trouble switching in. Now, can we break through the rest of them in the mid-game? Certainly, but one-on-one, going to be difficult to answer. So Tornadus unfortunately gets sacked here. It feels like Tornadus is kind of, as it usually is, ends up being in draft teams, a way to pivot around my opponent's sets and, deal some damage every once in a while, deal some knockoffs, throw a Hurricane out. And, the stats look pretty poor at the end of the season, but it's certainly been an amazing Pokemon to have on my team every week. Now, as you see there, it gets hit by the future sight, and it's really, really low. Now the Dracozolt can come in and start having some fun. I like to go for the substitute here. Now, the reason I do this is there's nothing really I care about my air balloon breaking against at this point. So if he elects to go into something like, Excadrill to get really, really aggressive, if he thinks that's, going to be a good play for him, not that I think it would really make sense for him. But, this is kind of the situation where I think substitute wasn't a great bring. I could have just Dragon Clawed here, saved a bunch of HP, just switched on this after. But, I like to go for substitute, and I think this, I played this game at almost 2 in the morning, my time, the day before I had to go to work. So certainly not the best conditions to be playing Mons in. But I think this substitute turn was a mistake. And I think in general, I don't think the move was a mistake. Would I have liked to have something to hit this owl a little harder? Probably. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be fine. As you can see here, the substitute, it's going to break the item, the air balloon too. Just nothing about this worked out the way I wanted to. And now I don't have an extra threat to answer the Excadrill, which is really, really problematic. And I mean, really tough for me to kind of manage the rest of the game from here, as I kind of allowed this, situation. I've kind of created an additional problem for myself here with the Excadrill. I already don't have any real walls that can switch this Pokemon anymore. It is tough scenes out here for the player on the left. Now, I could elect to just substitute again. I could just Dragon Claw again. Likely my best play is probably to stay in here and just Dragon Claw. I can't really switch into anything. It's going to do enough damage. But he's just going to elect to Roost here. And maybe this could have been an opportunity to go into Cinderace. The Roost, I wouldn't say Telegraph, but was pretty obvious, I think, that Roost was going to come out here and take this as an opportunity to get some free health back. And now I'm in an even worse position than I was when I clicked that move. And I think at this point, I kind of have to make a play here. If I go into Cinderace, that's a play that would have been better last turn. It's still an okay play this turn, but, that's just going to invite the Talonflame right back in. And now it's, we're kind of losing momentum in this game very, very quickly. My opponent here likes to go for the knockoff, so now we even lose our heavy-duty boots as a result of this play. So now we can even come in on South Rocks, more than 2 more times here. And this is what I was talking about of using your Pokemon when you have the health on them, is that your aggressive Pokemon have to come in and take hits every once in a while to play this sort of team effectively. And if you don't use the Pokemon on the roles that they're good for early on, and get the value out of them, oftentimes you're going to be left with Pokemon that are inefficient in the late game. And kind of this is the situation we see here. I just select a Pyro Ball onto the Talonflame, and thankfully this Pokemon I still have a really good switch into in Slowbro. That gives a free switch for D.Rey back into the Decidueye. And at this point, I wouldn't say there's not much I can do about it, but it's really difficult for me to kind of almost do anything about this situation I put myself into. You see I'm also 2 minutes behind on timer. It's starting to be really, really tough to, actually figure out how do we manage the game from here. So at this point, we're in kind of a situation we can, Power Ball here and potentially, have a chance at killing this Pokemon. It's likely faster. It could Brave Bird. Or we can go into Slowbro. A lot of the things here, though, the problem you see here is that, I actually end up being faster, which is interesting, is that, Decidueye is technically a free Pokemon to come back in here on a double. It'd be really, really tough play for my opponent to make, but, certainly a realistic play that, D.Rey could make in this spot. And the main reason that is because it's pretty telegraphed that I have to switch out here and not risk my Cinderace here, and it actually proves that he's slower than me, which is pretty interesting. And actually, like, honestly, all things considered, I would have expected to be, I would have expected to have been slower and to be at risk of taking damage. But obviously, this is a Pokemon that thrives on being very, very defensive in this matchup against stuff like Cinderace and the Kartana. And now the Decidueye comes back here. I'm fishing for a burn at this point. I haven't really. I got to use my Scalds, where they're useful, and a Scald Burn here would be pretty clutch, honestly, and to not wrap, pulling me back into this game just a little bit. No Scald Burn, so we're back in a situation where it is dicey. A dicey spot here, where there's really not much we can accomplish against this Decidueye, and I'm kind of at the point now, do I just, stay in, do I Future Sight, do I teleport, kind of what do I do to play around this. I end up teleporting. If he decides to attack me, that's fine. He elects to go for the knockoff, so I lose the Rocky Helmet. He hasn't clicked a move that's going to put too much pressure on my Slowbro yet, so that's kind of good news for me. I'm kind of outlasting this turn. He's giving me opportunities to, you know, get myself back into the game here. And I like to go into Kartana here, and this is where I have to put the pressure on that, on that fucking Talonflame. And that I have to get this off the, you know, get this Pokemon off the screen and get Talonflame out of the way. That'll enable Cinderace to do some damage into the late game, as well as Dracozolt now as well can do some stuff into the late game. And I like to just knock off here. You know, obviously super effective against this Decidueye. You know, we'll do a lot of damage, and then also we'll finish off that Talonflame, which hopefully will come in here in this spot. It was kind of my main hope here. He could bring in Gigalith, for example. As a response here. I think the knockoff is pretty telegraphed in this spot that I'm going to be going for it. There's really no other options that I realistically have in this spot that, other than going for the knockoff here. So, you know, Gigalith is certainly an option, but I think Talonflame is still likely the safest play, or maybe he just, you know, in my head I thought he was just going into Talonflame. He elects to go here into the Primarina instead. So this is a really good, you know, aggressive switch on my opponent's part. The problem you see with this switch is that it actually is in range here. It actually does get 2-hit KO'd by the knockoff. And I stared at this for a while. I'm like, is this actually a 2-hit KO? Like, if I run the calcs in my head, like, I'm actually still killing this Pokemon, right? Like, there's no way that this isn't dying. And my mental was, like, shook. I'm like, man, like, this is a very, very risky spot. Very risky to just, you know, potentially, you know, lose the game on just, like, head calking this knockoff, basically. I mean, I wouldn't say it's pretty obvious that it's just going to kill, but, you know, when you're at 2 a.m. and, you know, you spend all this time prepping and playing, you don't want to just lose because you were not calking and you were lying in bed playing. So he actually elects to switch here, which is interesting. He recognizes that it is, you know, a 2-hit KO. That's funny. He elects to switch out into the Talonflame. I go for the knockoff here, and this one is also a 2-hit KO. And this is like, okay, what the hell is going on here? Am I just going to get opened up for a free win with a knockoff on Kartana? What's happened here? How did this happen? You know, maybe you should have gone to Talonflame first, but would that have changed the situation? I don't know. And here I was really considering this one as well. I still have Slowbro in the back. Do I need to risk this? What do I gain from risking this? You know, I could get burned here. I've dodged the burn. You know, I've dodged burn, Flame Body. I've dodged Static in recent weeks. It's about time I get hit by, you know, one of these abilities. But I like to go for the knockoff instead. I really prioritize getting this Pokemon out of the way. Because realistically, with Scarf and with the Beast Boost, I will be able to deal a lot of damage still as a Scarf Pokemon the rest of the way. My opponent's team is still pretty weakened at this point. And Talonflame is gone and we get burned, which is unfortunate. But we are +1, so we're basically at -1 if you think about it that way, off the burn. And now we get to see what D.Rey elects to bring it in this spot. Pretty sure the Pokemon that's going to come in here is going to be the Gigalith. It's just kind of, you know, the thing that makes the most sense here. Get that sand back up, and now let's see. You know, he's kind of at the point now, is Excadrill now going to be, you know, an effective Pokemon, you know, to win this game for him? So right here is another really interesting spot here. This, you know, this Kartana is really low value the rest of the game, and I expect Excadrill to be aggressively brought in here to take advantage of basically any of the Pokemon that I have. It can come in on Slowbro. If I bring in Slowbro, he can just go Decidueye on a Scald, and that'd be fine. I don't think he's staying in here. There's really not much, you know, in it for him to stay in this specific scenario once he gets the sand out. So I like to knock off here, and I don't know if this was a good play or not. At this point, I'm kind of was hoping that D.Rey would allow me, well, not allow me to win, but give me a window where I can, you know, win the game through making mistakes. And I don't know if this is necessarily a mistake, but you know, he does elect to switch out here, and he brings in the Primarina. So definitely trying to take advantage of that Slowbro coming in. So this obviously is going to die to rocks, and then if Slowbro comes in the double, he brings in Decidueye, and then I'm in a really bad spot. I stand with Kartana. It gets the kill on Primarina, technically in the standings, which is kind of weird. Kind of would have thought that would go to something like a Cinderace, essentially for core chaining the rocks away. But That's another Pokemon out of the way, and now we just have to deal with the Excadrill, the Gigalith, and the Decidueye left. And right here in the sand, I do have 28 HP. I think I told D.Rey that I had 68 defense. So my apologies, I had 68 defense on another Pokemon. I don't know why I thought I had that, but at this point I'm kind of just sacking this off. I mean, what more is this Pokemon going to accomplish? And it's not going to be able to sweep against Decidueye, certainly not going to be able to sweep against, it can't sweep against a combination, I guess, rather, of Gigalith and Decidueye. So at this point, I just want to protect against a Swords Dance. I don't want to get Swords Dance on, bring in Slowbro, and then we're in a whole problem situation right here. Oh, I feel so bad. I live on 3 HP, and now the Excadrill is gone, and my opponent's last win condition has been removed from the game, and Kartana picks up another kill. And basically, this is kind of the nail in the coffin for D.Rey here. There's not really much he can do with Decidueye and Gigalith against my Cinderace, and my Dracozolt here. I can just bring out Dracozolt and, start dealing a lot of damage, and that'll open up the rest of the way for Cinderace. So at the end of the day, we're going to win this game, and it was a great game from D.Rey. I think he played this one really well. This was a matchup that was really advantageous for him, I think, and I had to take a lot of risks here. This is kind of one of those situations where this team is, I feel like a lot of the matchups end up being 50-50, or you end up being a little unfavored on my side. And, as Ultra Player did put this as the second worst team in the draft, ahead of Amel's team, which was, just a bunch of NFE Pokemon to leave himself with 69 points. But, it's one of those teams that it felt, and I don't know if it's because of the matchup I've had throughout the season, where it felt like none of my defensive walls really lined up well all the time, and all of my offensive Pokemon lined up well, but it made it really, it's a really difficult style to play consistently in draft and kind of account for a lot of the things in that, your opponent might be prepping or trying to play with. As it's been, kind of one of those seasons where you see right now, I've had to make some really, really, I would say potentially unnecessary and aggressive plays to stay in this game, and even to give myself a chance to win. And then potentially that Excadrill Earthquake was a roll that I had to get in the end. And it's one of those things, you've seen it go well for me, a lot of the season. Obviously, we're going to end up at 5 wins here at 5-2, but you've seen it go really bad against someone like T-Row Price, where it's just like the whole game falls apart in the first few turns, and there's nothing really that I can do the rest of the way. So, a pretty interesting season, and I'm really happy with how the regular season went. It's been a long time since I've done a draft league like this and played Wi-Fi. So to be able to go 5-2 and make playoffs, probably in week, 5, realistically, but end up, clinching it in week 7. I'm really content with how the season's gone, and it's one of the things I'm happy that I did it. I had worries about doing another Wi-Fi league and getting back into draft league when I'm really trying to focus on my Magic the Gathering gameplay. But I'm really happy I took the opportunity to play in this Wi-Fi league, and we're going into playoffs soon. One more week against OG Albina and the Miami Men's. Not really much in that game, mainly just standing for me, but we'll talk about that next week. And that is the end of week 7 against D.Rey. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, rating, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed to the channel already. If you guys enjoyed Draft League on the channel, let me know if you guys want to see me keep doing it. I don't know if I'm going to do it, I wouldn't say much past this season. I'm definitely not going to do it until the next generation, but Magic the Gathering is kind of my deal and my style. So if this is something you want to see in the future, let me know, and I'll potentially keep it around as a side series to do on the channel. But that is the end of today's video for me. I'll see you guys in the next one, and as always, have a wonderful day.